Baruch Hashem, today's daf yomi is Shevuos daf Chaf Daled. Shevuos 24. It's dedicated for a Shemir for the Chayalim, Atzal for the Shvuyim, and a Yeshua for Am Yisrael. Let us start right after the Mishnah on the bottom of 22b. Did I say Shevuos Chaf Daled or Shevuos Chaf Gimel? Today's daf yomi is Shevuos 23. We're going to start right after the Mishnah on the bottom of 22b. Amar B'chia Bar Avin, Amar Shmuel. So Rabbi Chia bar Avin taught in the name of Shmuel. What are we talking about? That we had said we're on the bottom of 22b, right after the Mishnah. Chaf Beis Amar Beis, right after the Mishnah. So the Gemara told us that our Mishnah had stated that if you say, I take an oath that I'm not going to eat, that includes that I'm not going to drink as well. So says Rabbi Chia bar Avin in the name of Shmuel, Shmuel shelo ochel v'shasa chayev. So he says, if a person says, I'm not going to eat, I take an oath, and then he drinks, he's liable because drinking is considered evening. Drinking is considered eating. How do we know that drinking is eating? Ibaya sema svara, Ibaya sema kra. If you want, you could say the basis for this idea is logic. And if you could, and on the other hand, you could say that it is a verse. So what's the source? Ibaya sema svara. If you want, you could say it's logic. Darmoi in shiluchavre, because people say to their friend, nito midi va'ayli v'achli v'shasu. Because people say to his friend, let's go eat something. And then they come into his house and he gives them food and drink. So obviously drink is included within when a person says, I'm not going to eat anything, it means he's not going to drink as well. Or alternatively, we could say it's a verse. And how do we know this? How do we know shtia b'kol achila? How do we know drinking is considered eating? The Amr Shlakish minayin l'shtia shehi b'kol achila. How do we know that drinking is eating? As it says, v'achalta fnei Hashem lokecha b'makom asher yivchar v'shakein shemotzam masar digancha v'tiroshcha v'yitzarecha. You'll eat there in the place before Hashem your God, in the place that Hashem selected to dwell there. You will eat there your tithes, your grain, your wine, your tiroshcha is your wine, v'yitzarecha, and your oils. V'tirosh chamrahu. Your wine, your tirosh is wine. V'ksiv v'achalta, and it's called eating. So therefore we know that eating refers to drinking. V'dilma al yedei anigron. Maybe it doesn't mean drinking the wine. Maybe, says the Gemara on the top of 23a, it means through anigron, that you're eating it. It's a type of food. Basically, what is anigron? It's a type of food that they basically poured the wine into. I mean, it's like cooking wine. And so basically, maybe it refers to eating wine. Gemara says, no, the Amar Amar Shmuel. And how do we know that? And how do we know that wine can be eaten, not just imbibed? As Rabbi Shmuel said, anigron, that he said about anigron is maya de silke. This is a cooked food of weeks. And aktigaron is maya de shilki. And aktigaron is a water that is basically stewed vegetables. So therefore, we see from here that anigron is a food item. So Allah Amarav Achabar Yaakov. So that's not a source. We learn it out from the following pasuk, Mehacha, from this following source. What is the source? It says, "V'nasata hakesef b'chol asher taveh nafshecha." You shall place the money in everything your soul desires. V'bakar v'tzon u'v'yayin u'v'shechar, on your cattle, your sheep, your wine, and your alcohol. So, and then it continues on with that verse, "V'achalta sham," and you eat there. Yayin chamrahu. It says the wine, the yayin we know is wine. And it says, and here, if you want to say, well, maybe it means by adding it to a food item and eating it as a food, it says that this is, it says in the verse, with this alcohol, which means mide de meshaker, something that can make you drunk. And that's only through drinking, because eating the wine will not make you drunk. Dilma, and maybe you want to say that shecher does not mean yayin, but rather it means tevela ki'ilos. Maybe it means like a loaf of figs that were dried out and pressed together. and it will make you drunk naturally. Like we learned that a Kohen who basically ate a cake of figs and drank honey and milk, these are things that naturally make you drunk. The milk used to ferment to make you drunk, and then serves in the temple. He's chayiv. He's liable. So therefore, how do we know that it refers to wine? Ela gamar shecher shecher minazir. So we compare the word shecher from here to the shecher by a Nazarite. Malalan yayin, just like over there it's wine. Afkan yayin. Also over here it is wine, and so therefore that's the source that wine, that drinking is considered eating. Rava brings another additional proof from our Mishnah that drinking is eating. Amarava, Afananami Tanina. Rava says we have another proof because it learns in the Mishnah. It says Shevuos ochel v'achal v'shasa eino chayev ela achas. You're only liable one time. Now, if you want to say that drinking is eating, it's that's why the Tana needs to teach us that you're liable once. And he's telling us that you're not liable once for the eating and once for the drinking. But if you say drinking is not considered eating, if you want to say that drinking is not considered eating, and so therefore drinking was not prohibited by his oath, then that will be the case. We have a difficulty because that's similar to a person who says an oath that I will not eat, and afterwards he ate and did malacha. Do you have to teach us that he's only liable once? He only ate one thing. So it's obviously from the case that generally speaking, drinking is considered eating. So because we would have thought that he might have been liable for two, so we're saying he's only liable for one. If you want to say drinking is considered eating, what about the next clause of our Mishnah? An oath that I will not eat and I will not drink, he's liable for two. Then so Abai says, if he says I will not eat and I'll not drink, why is he liable for twice? The second, since eating includes drinking, when he says I will not drink a second time, it's like he's taking an oath upon a pre-existing oath. He shouldn't be liable. So Rava says to Abai, Amoy Halsam the Amar Shlo Eshte V'Hadar Amar Shlo Ochel. No, the case of our Mishnah is talking about a case where first he said, I will not drink, and only then did he say, I will not eat. That's where you get two oaths. Dishtia b'kal achila isa, but achila b'kal shtia leisa, because the first oath he made was about drinking. Drinking is part of eating, but eating is not part of drinking. So the Gemara, and therefore it needs to, that's why in that case he's liable twice. The Gemara says, Amar Shevuos ochel v'shelo eshteh. But what about if he takes the case and says, an oath that I will not eat and I will not drink? If he says, he takes an oath and says, I will not eat and I will not drink, and he ate and he drank, what does that mean? It says, if he says, I take an oath that I will not eat and I will not drink, and he ate and he drank, you mean to say that he would only be liable once? What is the law that he's only liable once? If that's the case, when the Tana learned in the Reisha that if he eats, if he says an oath that I'm not going to eat, and then he eats and he drinks, he's only liable in one case. He should have said, listen, he says, even in a case where he says, I will not eat and I will not drink, meaning to say, the Tana should have said the bigger chiddush in a case where that he swears, I will not eat and I will not drink. If in that case he's only liable once, then for sure if he just says, I will not eat, he's only liable once. So therefore the Gemara says, like we learned earlier, that first it says, I will not eat and then I will not drink, and you're liable twice. And why are you liable twice? Didn't he already take an oath not to eat, which included not drinking? Shani Acha, because this case is different. Because since he said I will not eat, and then he says I'll not drink, he demonstrates by his next statement that when he said I will not eat, he means just not eating. Our Mishnah itself infers this. Dekatani, because our Mishnah says Shevuos ochal v'achal ochel shein ruyin la'achila. If he says I will not eat, and then he eats food that are not edible, v'shos mashkin shein ruyin l'shtiya, or he drinks that are not imbibable, potter is exempt. Meaning to say, the only reason why he's exempt from the drinks is because they're not imbibable. Haruyin, but if they would be imbibable, chayev v'amai hashvuos ochel kamar. Why is he liable for the drink? He already took an oath that I will not eat. So therefore, it must be that drinking is part of eating. And Mar says, no, Dilma the Amar Tarati. Maybe he said both. Shevuos ochel, Shevuos eshte. And only because of that would he have been liable for the drinking, because he said both. So we see we can't really be medayik from our Mishnah to learn either way. Says the Gemara, Shevuos ochel v'achal paslitin. If he takes an oath that he's not going to eat wheat, and then he eats, and he says, and then he eats the barley bread, he's liable once. But if he says an oath that I'm not going to eat not only wheat, but also barley and also spelt, then he's liable for each one. Says the Gemara, Vidilma, what's the reason why he's liable for each and every one? But since he specified each type of bread by itself, he's demonstrating that he wants an oath to apply to each and every one. So the Gemara says, maybe the reason why he took why he specified is not to make him liable for each and every one, but to exempt him from other things. Because if he said, I'm not going to eat, maybe you might have thought it includes all the foods in the world. So he's saying, no, I'm just not eating wheat, barley, and spelt. Gemara says, no, you should have said, or in the Kusman, you should have said just wheat, barley, and spelt. From the fact that he adds on wheat bread, barley bread, and spelt bread, meaning to say each different type of food is what he's prohibited. The Dilmo Lakos, maybe what he's talking about is to say, maybe basically he was talking about eating it in an unusual manner, but eating bread is not prohibited. Maybe that's always prohibiting upon himself. If he had just said wheat, barley, and spelt, that would not have demonstrated his intent. Maybe his only intent, maybe people assume that he was just prohibiting upon himself to like swallow it whole or any unusual type of eating, or the wheat berries. But the actual bread was not prohibited, so therefore he needed to clarify. The person no, pas. He could have said bread that is made of wheat, barley, and salt. The Dilma pas so oren v'kusma. Maybe we might have thought that it meant wheat bread to eat and barley and spelt to eat their berries. No, the Gemara says no. Pas vishal so oren vishal kusman, because he could have said it like that. The Gemara says v'dilma yidei tarugos. Maybe you might have thought that he won't only eat them. He will only not eat them if they're mixed together on the top of 23b. So therefore, Gemara says, if that's the case, Ema v'chein shel or v'chein shel kusman. He could have said v'chein. So from the fact that he said pas, lamoi shma mino achad, he's saying that he's liable for each one. Okay, so it says the Gemara, the Mishnah stated Shevuos eshte v'shasa mashkin harbe eno chayiv elach. He says, I'm not going to drink, and he drinks a lot of different liquids. He's liable for each and every one. But if he says, I'm not going to drink wine and oil and honey, then he's liable for 3. Bishlam Mahasam says the Gemara makes sense. If he says, well, I'm not going to eat bread that's wheat, barley, and spelt, he's liable for each one. The Amris Miyatsrohe, because he added extra words, pas and pas. Pas, he said pas klitim pas or pas guzman. L'chiyuva, elahacha might have a little memor. What could he have said here? meaning to say, in this case, where he says he takes an oath not to drink wine, oil, and honey, how could he have said it shorter? Then Mar says, Dilma Mifter and Dilma Mifter Navshi Mashkin Achrinikasi. Maybe he's just specifying them, not to say it's three separate oaths, but to say he's allowed to drink the other liquid. It says, Amra Papa Hacha b'munacha l'fanav askinan. Shayelo Omar Shevuos Eshta Elu. No, we're talking about a case where the liquids were in front of him, and he could have said an oath that I won't drink these. From the fact that he specifies them means he's taking an oath on each and every one. But Dilma Elu Delo Shatine, but Achrina Shatine, maybe he's saying these I won't drink. We might have thought that means these I won't drink, but I'll drink others. Ella the Amar Shvua Delo Shatine Kigon Eli. So he says no. He could have said I won't drink anything like these, and that means he won't drink these. Now, if that would be the case, Dilma could go in Eila do Shatini Batzer Meachi, Tfei Meachi Shatini. Maybe he says, I won't drink less than this, but more than that I can but more than that I can drink. So Allah could go into Amri, he could have said Shvuos Eshta Mimin Elu, an oath that I won't drink from these types. The Dilma Elu do Shatina, maybe that only means this he can drink in a gufo Shatina, but they themselves maybe you might have thought these types I won't drink, but they themselves, the drink themselves, they would drink. So therefore, if that would be the case, Gemara says, it would have added that language. These I won't drink and their types. Now we're talking about a case, where his friends are trying to get him to drink. Come drink wine with me. And honey and oil. He could have said, he could have just said an oath, I won't drink with you. Why did they have to specify these exact things? He's liable for each and every single one. We learned over there in the Mishnah Daf Lamed Vav with respect to an oath about a pikadon, meaning to say that anybody who has money of his friend in his hand, whether it's a deposit or a loan or a theft, and he didn't return it, and his friend asks him for money, and he denies it, and he swears falsely he doesn't have it, he's in violation of what the Torah says. You're not allowed to lie to your friend. And he has to pay back the principal and also add a fifth and bring a korban asham, whether intentional or whether accidental. So on this basis, we learned if a guy says give me wheat, barley, and spelt that I have in your possession, and he says he says I've got nothing. He only has to bring one korban because he only swore one oath. But if he says but he says I don't have wheat, barley, and spelt, he has to bring three different korban asham. He said, even if each type of these items, there's not on its own is not worth a penny, but only from all of them together, they're still nevertheless combined to make him have to bring a korban. So Puigi Baravacha Ravina. Chad Amar, one of them says, Aprati Mechayev, Aklali Lo Mechayev. That if somebody says that one of his other opinion is liable for the specifics, meaning to say he has three oaths. He takes an oath on each one of these specific parts, one on the wheat, one on the barley, one on the kusmin, but we don't say that in addition to this, he has an additional oath that he's taken on everything. Meaning to say, when he says Shvuos, that includes all of them. And when he says Chitin, Se'orin, V'kusmin, those are three specifics. So he's only liable three for the specifics, but not for the general. Then son says he also is liable for a fourth oath, for the general one. And so therefore, according to this approach, where Rabbi Yochanan says that they all combine, that's also on the second part. Meaning to say, even though there are three separate oaths, nevertheless, if one of them has worth a pruta, then they're all have to take an oath. So the Gemara says, Hachamai, what about our sugya, where he says an oath that I do not have wheat, pas chitin, pas or pas pitin. Do we say that this will be 4? One where he says shelo ochel, or not eat, and then another 3 for each specific, or maybe there's no connection. The Gemara says, Amrava Hakiach, they're not the same. It's a totally different case. Hasam mechayev hakol or mechayev prata. There in that case, he's liable for the general and the specific. Because if you by a Shevuos Pikadon, if you take an oath that you don't have anything and then you swear again, you are able to Hashamos. Here's it's totally different. The oath was already from Sinai, so you're not liable twice on the same oath. Okay, the next piece, it says in our Mishnah, Shevuos ochal, and he takes an oath that he's not going to eat. And he ate food that he is not capable of eating, and he drinks liquids that are not capable of drinking. He is exempt. And then he takes an oath that he's not going to eat nevelos and trains shkatzim ramasim. He's liable. Agufa kasha. This is an internal contradiction. Amrit Shevuos ochal. He said an oath that he's not going to eat. So he means to have in mind something that's capable of eating. He drink and ate things that are not edible. He's exempt. And then it states, and then afterwards it states, and then it says, if he eats the nevelos trefa shkater amasim, he is liable. Ma'ishna reisha depater, ma'ishna sefer the chayev. Why in the first case is he exempt, and why in the last case is he liable? So the Gemara says, "Halakasha reisha b'stam." In the first place, he's stam, so therefore he's exempt because he means only those things that are specific. The seifa b'mefarish, and in the latter case, he's very specific, and so therefore he's liable. Mefarish nami gufa tikshe is also amai mushba v'uma miyarsina. So now we get to the answer which we discussed several times. No, the reason why mefarish the reason why if he says I'm not going to eat nevelos, it's where he says an oath that I'm not going to eat nevelos and ksheros, and because the oath also applies on kosher foods, therefore the oath also takes a place on the non-kosher foods. Rish Lakish says, where he says he's going to eat just a small amount. Taliba de Rabbanan, because according to Rabbanan, that is not prohibited from Sinai, or Ibistam, or if he just says it straight without specifying, Aliba de Rebbe Kibbutz, such a liable even for a small amount. So therefore, we'll take this up. This is the sugya, and we'll take it up, God willing, on Shabbos. We'll repeat it. Shkoyach to everybody. A good Shabbos.